It's too funny.
That was
man,
a great space.
it
That was a
was.
great space, Liberty. I'm so glad you
Thank
hosted.
you.
I mean, I know you had your doubts and you weren't sure if you wanted to do that space or not, but I think it was necessary. I think a lot of people needed to let off some steam after the Zoom meeting and just the crazy events of the past few weeks. I think we needed that, and I'm so glad you did it. Matter of fact, while you're here, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind. I sometimes take spaces that I think are particularly good or particularly important discussions, and I release them as a podcast later across all these different platforms for people who don't use X, right? I'll put them out on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook and VK and every social media platform that I can, just to get the word out if I think it's an important discussion that needs to be like saved for posterity later. And X automatically deletes spaces after like 60 days just to save space on their servers. So I don't want these to be lost forever. And if it's okay with you, I was going to ask your permission, Liberty, if you wouldn't mind me taking the space that you hosted tonight and repurposing that as episode 16 of the Kennedy Americans podcast. Would that be okay with you?
I'd be honored, Lori. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll do the editing and the hard work and I'll put it out there, but I just want to make sure it lives forever because I think it was a really important discussion and a really productive conversation that needed to be had.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, as far as the ones I host, if you go back and listen to the replays before those, and thank you for the knowledge. I didn't realize X did that.
Yep, they do. It's unfortunate, but I understand. They've only got so much server space.
Yeah. Makes sense. It makes sense. So, Lori, I'll tell you this.
At least it's not censorship.
Just let me know. Good point, Bryce. Let me know if you have one of my spaces where you want to, even if it's just a quick, moment in time of it, just say, hey, I'm going to grab this. Okay, cool. Just so we're on the same page, you're always welcome because this is about helping this man get to the White House.
Absolutely. And thank you for letting me do that. Thanks for letting me speak on your space tonight.
All good, Lori. Thank you so much. I'm always happy that you came on. We had a great conversation. Bryce was willing to co-host, which is fantastic because it's always good to have a wingman. All that stuff. I'm still learning this environment, but I'm finding I really like this environment. I'm starting to find a calling, I think, a little bit too. So any way we can help, just let us know. We're here to win and we're here to help each other. That's the bottom line. That's what I closed with was that. And I hope that Bryce, you asked for this to be tell you something good. And I was like, oh man, did I bring Bryce down at the end? Did I really bring crash him out or something? So I hope I didn't do that to you, my friend.
No.
Good.
You didn't bring me down. I think this conversation brings me down, right? Because I think if we look at the historical context of Israel, Gaza, or any kind of foreign war that's going on during the presidency, it's a really wonderful way for the big parties to distract us from all of the really negative things that are going on here in the United States. Like, for instance, Xi Jinping comes to San Francisco and all of a sudden now the homeless are gone. Like, where did the homeless go? What happened to all these homeless people? And how is it that Xi Jinping coming to San Francisco is what makes you clear the homeless out? Like, there's a lot of things I really want answered. And this constant talk about Gaza is a wonderful way to keep people distracted and arguing and at each other's throats. And it's sad because I see so many people digging into it. And I'm just like, man, you're doing exactly what they want you to do right now.
Exactly.
Thank you, Lori. You're making this the topic.
Yeah, I love that you hit that point during the previous space, Bryce. It was so important that, Kennedy's not running to be the president of Israel, or he's not running to be the president of any other country but the United States of America. And we've got problems, folks. I don't have to tell you how messed up things are here in the United States. That's the whole reason that he's running. He's trying his best to fix it. So I hope that people can keep things in perspective. As tragic as this war is, it is 8,000 miles away. And our position, our national policy has been the same since 1948. These things aren't going to change overnight. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a new president who's at least willing to listen. But I can guarantee you that's not Biden, and it's probably not Trump. So at least at least Bobby is the guy who will listen to dissenting voices, even within his own campaign, and really give consideration to what they have to say. He may ultimately decide to stick with Israel, because that's been his position his whole life. It's been the national policy of the United States for so long. And he really truly believes in his position, and we have to respect that, even if we disagree with it. But the main thing is, and I think Kennedy's got his eye on the prize here. You notice that his tweets every day, he's not one of those people who tweets every day about Israel and Palestine. He put out his tweet on October 7th, and he's barely tweeted about it since, because he's focused on the United States. He's focused every day. If you look at his Twitter feed, look at the videos he's putting out, he's talking about making things better for our country, to make America great again, if you will. But he's focused on us and how we can help all of these people, like the story that Liberty told, the people he's trying to help. We're all trying to help people less fortunate than ourselves, people who are having their utilities cut off because they can't afford a $600 electric bill, $500 heating bill. They can't afford groceries. They can't even keep their water turned on. People living in tents. We got Bidenvilles under every bridge. We've got a homeless problem that's not even being addressed by the Biden administration. We've got so many problems here that I don't mean to minimize in any way the war over there, the tragedy over there, but we've got a lot of problems to fix over here. And I think he's got his eye exactly where it ought to be, which is on our domestic policy. And try to find any presidential candidate that you agree with 100% on foreign policy. Good luck.
Hey, Lori, can I interrupt real quick?
Absolutely. I was ranting. Go ahead.
No, no, I just wanted to say you mentioned MAGA and make America great again. And what I wanted to say was we should modify it to make Americans great again. In other words, restore the
Yes.
middle class. How about that?
Yes. Absolutely, bro.
That's why I wanted to interrupt. Sorry. Continue, or somebody can jump in, or I'll ramble for a few minutes if you'd like.
Well,
But go
no,
ahead,
I think
Bryce.
it's one of the things that I like when I focus on Kennedy is Instagram right now, because it's like the only bastion of hope that I have. Because, at least on my feed, what is, I guess, trending are the videos of Kennedy talking about BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Like, those are the things that I'm constantly seeing on my feed. And so I'm like, I'm really happy that there is a silent majority out there that's like, I don't want to deal with what's going on X. I don't want to deal with what's going on Facebook. So I'm gonna post my shit on Instagram, and then I'm gonna dip set. And it's very, very positive for the most part, which is kind of cool, because I would have thought that Meta would have like immediately stopped those videos from going around, but they are. And you guys should check them out. They're actually really, really good. People are mashing up his speeches, then his podcasts, and all like tracing BlackRock and Vanguard's control over the S&P 500, tracing how much single-family homes they currently own. It's just nice to see people are focusing on the real issues of America. And Liberty, my biggest pet peeve, and Tyler, you're here too, because you've heard it more than I rail against BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, because those are the enemies. To me, there is no higher enemy to this country than those three groups, who own each other, by the way. So it's really just one gigantic entity that's fucking this country over.
That's right, Bryce. And that's exactly why these Bidenvilles under every bridge and in every city park are getting bigger and bigger and bigger over the past 3 years since the pandemic, when these corporate landlords went on a buying spree, buying up all the property and pricing it way out of range for the average working American. We've got so many working Americans, people with jobs, sometimes two jobs, living in their car, living in a tent. This is unacceptable. This is the United States. And Bobby gets that. It's one of the driving passions behind his campaign because he doesn't see anybody else trying to make it better. I mean, what's Trump's solution to the homeless problem? He said he wanted to take the tent cities and get them out of our metro areas because nobody wants to look at the homeless. Nobody wants to smell the homeless. He out of sight, out of mind. That's Trump's solution. He wants to put the tent cities on the outskirts of town, right? Just get them out of our sight, put them somewhere out of town, and let somebody else deal with them. That is Trump's solution. That is not Bobby Kennedy's solution at all.
No, and you know what's scary, Lori, truthfully, and the thing that I'm most terrified about is, and this is again where I'm really happy about Instagram because these are the videos that I'm seeing it. But, Larry Fink is going on not television, but doing, live interviews where he's telling people, I am trying to change the behaviors of every company that we have a major stake in. We want to force this woke agenda on all the companies that we have a major stake in. So these guys are really the ones that are pushing this, kind of woke, transgendered, all equality thing. And if you think about it, what a brilliant way to keep us arguing with each other and looking and not looking behind the curtain, right? We're going to look at the guy that's the big giant floating head that's in front of us, but we're not looking behind the curtain. And I think what Kennedy is finally doing is like, no, I'm opening this curtain up. I'm exposing you guys for who you are. You guys are evil, just this evil entity. And we should start saying, instead of saying the military industrial complex, the big pharma, or big oil, we should just say BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, because that's who they are. They run all of those entities. Go ahead, Tyler.
I heard you guys talking about the homeless people. Did y'all see Gavin Newsom's interview or his press conference today?
With the puppet?
Where he was like, I'm going to post it in the comments, but he said something like, you guys might think that we're cleaning up the homeless because some fancy important people are coming in town. And you're right. I was
Yep.
like, what the fuck?
Maybe Xi Jinping should come to town more often.
Yeah, I don't.
They'd clean that city up.
Yeah, it's a disaster. Like all of our politicians are a wreck. But like yeah, and actually, Lori, you might be able to answer this one because I'm not actually familiar with what RFK is planning on doing about like for the homeless population because I haven't heard anything in particular other than like just trying to rebuild the economy in general. But I mean, like, is there anything specific like to remedy the homeless population, like to get them help or like find them?
Yes, I think he's still working on a more comprehensive plan. But one thing that he's outlined that I really liked was sort of, what does he call them? Like recovery farms, um, where the people who are homeless, who have addiction issues, and need to get clean. Obviously, as a recovering addict, he understands. And, I really like this idea of, teaching them organic farming, to have these places where they can get clean, stay clean, and find productive new ways to provide for themselves, and to grow real organic food for themselves. I think that's a good step in the right direction. Obviously, there's more that needs to be done. That's just one spoke in the wheel, of what can be done about the homeless crisis. But, I'm very curious to hear more too, because I know that there's much more that we have to address in terms of building new housing, whether that is government projects. And I know that, the projects get a bad rap. People tend to look down upon the projects, but, under the FDR administration, they were a great, great thing during the Great Depression when people were living under bridges and we had Hoovervilles under every bridge and City Park. A very similar situation to where we are now. Not only did Roosevelt put them back to work with the WPA and the jobs programs, but also that's when the government started building housing projects all across America. And over the years, those projects have been run down. They haven't been properly maintained by the government, and that's why they get a bad rap. And unfortunately, they too have become dens of crime and drugs. But I think that we need to clean them up, and I think we need to build more, because even though it's a cardboard box apartment, it's very small, but it's better than living in a tent, don't you think? It's better than living in a car. At least you have plumbing. At least you have a kitchen. You have a warm place to sleep at night with a roof over your head. I don't think there's any shame at all in government projects. I think we need a lot more of them. A lot of politicians, especially in the last 30 years, like to talk about affordable housing. We say we need more affordable housing, but what that really means is it's always a big handout to big developers, usually to build some high-rise condo building in your city that's very overpriced. And then they set aside a certain number of units that they call affordable. But if you look at the prices, they're really not affordable. The question is, affordable to whom? It depends on the city. It depends on the cost of living and what the wages are in that particular city. But most people who work low-wage jobs, and let's face it, most Americans do work low-wage jobs or do gig work, they can't afford the, quote, affordable housing. If you look at Section 8 in almost every major city, there's a waiting list of anywhere from 3 to 5 years to get a Section 8 housing voucher. And there's just not enough projects for everyone. So some might say it's socialism. They might say it's communism to build free housing for people. But it did work. If there's one good thing we can say about the Soviet Union or some communist countries, is they don't have homeless people. Okay. Even when you look at Russia today, which is not a communist country anymore, those government projects that were built during the Soviet era are still operational. People still live in them, and nobody is homeless in Russia. There's no such thing as homelessness in Russia. And that's how they solved their homeless problem, was they made sure that every citizen had a home, and it was provided by the government at no cost to the citizen. Now, that might be too radical for America. I don't know if that would work in the United States. I don't know if Congress would ever approve it, if we could get something like that through the Congress. Certainly, as long as it's controlled by Republicans, I doubt that they would let that happen. But in a cost of living crisis, we've got to do something about it. They can't just continue to vote no on everything. It's not going to get any better. And I think that Kennedy is the kind of guy who has that ability to work across the aisle. He still has the goodwill of many Republicans, and I think he's going to continue to cultivate goodwill with Republicans so that maybe, just maybe, we can get something passed. We can actually get something done in the next administration to really combat and do something meaningful about our housing crisis, rather than the usual blah, blah, blah they give us about affordable housing, because there's no such thing. There just isn't. And that's all I have to say about that. I hope that he will consider government housing or some form thereof and building more of it, whether it's available at a low or reduced rent to people who are working poor or homeless. But what do people who don't have an income do? Are they just supposed to sleep on park benches or in their cars if they have a car, or in a tent? These are things that I hope he's thinking about. I'm pretty sure he is, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from him on that.
I actually heard him, Laurie, speak about the very same thing that you're talking about. And he mentioned exactly what you were saying, going back to looking at what FDR did and really kind of doing some kind of New Deal um, programs. He said, the Hoover Dam was one of the, biggest infrastructures that came out of the Roosevelt administration, and so many jobs came from it. Another thing that he talks about is he wants to bring the cost of housing down, and how he wants to do that is basically give everybody a rich uncle, right? He said, in order to bring, that rate down to 3%, what we're going to do is the government is going to co-sign with you. And, if for some reason you're not able to meet the cost, or if you foreclose, it goes to the government, and then the government can try to put that in the hands of somebody else. And he says, obviously, we need to do more work on it to make sure that you don't lose your home and you don't lose your house. And he has more things that he was going to do to expand that. But what you saw is a man that is is thinking about this already. He's thinking about the things that we need to do in order to, reduce homelessness or reduce poverty. And he's talking about, BlackRock and Vanguard taking up all of these single family homes because he sees what they're trying to do. They're trying to turn us into a country full of renters. They're trying to control who we are. We're gonna own nothing and we're gonna love it. Well, no, we're not gonna
No,
do
we're
that.
not.
We're not going to love it, and
That's right.
so Kennedy's talking about these things, and I appreciate him so much because when you hear him speak and you can be there physically to hear the words, that this isn't just something that he's just saying. This is personal to him, and I feel that.
It is. It truly is. And I'd just like to add one point to that real quick before you move to the next speaker. I'm a historian, a history buff, and I study the presidency of FDR a lot. And I've been going back into that over the past year as I watch our society crumble. I'm reminded of the election of 1932. We're facing so many of the same issues that the country was facing when FDR came to power, and he beat Herbert Hoover in 1932. But I wanted to say that, and it's important to remember, and I know that Bobby knows this, that the reason that FDR won 4 terms, an unprecedented 4 terms, was not just because Democrats were voting for him. He won by such huge margins that he had Republicans voting for him. We're talking 60, 70% landslides. And the reason was that he earned the people's trust. He managed to convince the majority of the population that he had the right vision for America. And I know it's hard to believe in the 21st century when we're all so jaded and people hate their government. They no longer trust their government. That's what Bobby talks about so much, is how to restore the people's trust in their government. Because if we can't restore trust, we're going to end up like the Soviet Union. We're going to collapse. And I'm old enough to remember the fall of the Soviet Union. It wasn't pretty. And then the decade after that was even worse, when they were trying to rebuild. So we don't want that to happen here. And I think that Kennedy is indeed the remedy. And I think that he wants to get us back to a place where Americans trust their government again. And one of the ways that Roosevelt did that was through the New Deal, even though a lot of those New Deal programs, excuse me, were eventually struck down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional. That didn't stop FDR from trying anyway, and he did some good. And some of those programs, of course, are still with us today. And, we've got things like unemployment, we've got Social Security, and so many good things that came out of the Roosevelt administration that have stood the test of time. And that's what we need in the 21st century, 100 years later. It's time for a New Deal. We need a redo on the New Deal and a New Deal that fits this place and this time and our unique problems now in the 21st century. So I'll shut up and let somebody else talk.
Yeah, no, I think it is fascinating. And one of the things I always say, Lori, why I think FDR brought so many Republicans with him is because he took Theodore Roosevelt's 1912 platform and made it work. Everything that he did was already things that Theodore Roosevelt was saying, this is what we should be doing for government. And there were a lot of progressive Republicans that were like, yes, this is exactly what we need to be doing. All right, go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I actually really like the idea of the, and I think now that you say it, I think I'd heard that before, the about the like the farms and stuff like that where people can go and kind of recover. I actually really like that idea a lot. Um, I think, and talking about like the New Deal, I mean, like correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, like that's kind of what the Green New Deal is kind of aimed at doing. It sounds like I don't, I skimmed over the bill. I didn't like thoroughly read it, but like I kind of read through all the points on it, and kind of just seems like it's sort of like that, where they just kind of have like these community, or like just like a massive movement to like build stuff, and like I guess it's just focused on the infrastructure of uh, you know, things that could kind of help the environment. Which I'm not sure. There's an argument that some of it's actually going to hurt the environment. I don't know, but it is kind of an interesting idea. I don't, does anyone know what RFK stance is on the Green New Deal?
That's a good question. As far as I know, I haven't seen him take any policy position on it. Last I heard, the Green New Deal legislation was dead in the water in Congress anyway. I don't think there's any chance of it going anywhere. So that's probably why he's not talking about it.
But something similar
I
might be.
remember. I remember when it came out that he supported it. He supported at least the idea of it.
I think it's. I mean, like it's an interesting. It's an interesting idea. I think. Again, like there's certain things like people talk about like the batteries and stuff. Like you got to do all this mining that wrecks the environment, and like it kind of does more harm than good. But I mean, like I don't like. I mean, like I don't know if anyone listens to like Joe Rogan's podcast at all, but he had Elon Musk on, and he was talking, and like Elon Musk was basically saying that like we could power the United States on like 100 by 100 square miles of solar fields, and we could just plant that somewhere in the middle of America, and like no one would even know it's there. Again, I don't know exactly how that works, and it may just be total shit. But if that is true, I mean, it's an interesting idea. I mean, like hell, like people need to work. Pay them to. Like you got to pay someone to do it. You might as well pay somebody who needs it to kind of get up and go to work and build the infrastructure that we need to get to that point if it's actually going to help. I think just that everyone just gets caught up in the whole like climate change is a hoax or like all these different things that these points that like no actual scientist is actually making. It's kind of bizarre. Just to kind of see it all go down, but I mean, it's an interesting idea. It might help revitalize the economy and put some people back to work at least. Um, yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I got. But I
Yeah,
do appreciate you letting me speak in here, and it's good to see you guys all in here on my Twitter friends, ex friends.
Tyler, it's always good to see you. I think the problem with anybody doing anything about the Green New Deal is that the Democrats and the Republicans, especially the establishment Democrat and the Republicans, are just so far deep in the pockets of BlackRock and Vanguard. Um, they're not going to do anything. This is how if they want to see themselves reelected and keep the money train rolling, they're going to do exactly what their corporate overlords say. So we're never going to see change with a Democrat or a Republican. It's going to have to be somebody outside of the party that forces the change to come. And I'm hoping that change is going to be Kennedy. I'm not going to say that I believe, that Kennedy's going to win because I don't know that. I hope in my heart and in my soul that Kennedy is going to be the victor. But again, he has so much that he has to go up against. And let's be real, the pockets of BlackRock and Vanguard are very, very, very deep. Between them, they have $20 trillion. So that's a lot to go through. What do we have to say, Kristen?
Hi guys, how are y'all doing tonight? So Elon is, I don't know, he's powering Australia. I don't know how that works either, but he's powering Australia somehow. I don't know what the deal is. I heard bits and pieces about that in the Joe Rogan podcast, but I don't know. I don't know how that goes, but yeah, he's definitely powering something in Australia somehow. I don't know. But as far as the font, look, so the addiction crisis in this country is very important to me. I lost my stepsister. I was an addict for 15 years. I've been clean for 12. Um, so it's very important to me. I've kind of been kind of disappointed that I haven't heard much about it from him, considering he has been where I have and many others have. Um, and as the homeless crisis, we can work on, we can work on a deal as far as um, mortgage rates, but the main thing that we have to work on with homelessness is the mental health crisis. A lot of these people want to sit out there. They don't want to be in homes. To be they don't want to be under clerical support. They really don't. They feel like they're being okay. I'm from New Orleans, and we have a serious issue down here with homelessness. All of our bridges are they're full of of tent cities. You know, every corner is someone begging, and it's so sad. But I don't really honestly believe that even if they had projects, or if we fix the mortgage rates, that they would come up from under these bridges. If you hear some of them talk, they've been there a while and they don't mind being there. And and you can see that it's a mental problem. It's a they are having some sort of mental health crisis, you know, and you see it in a lot of them. Um, and also an addiction problem. Um, the farms, that sounds like a wonderful idea. Now, I don't know that when I was using, if I would have done something like that, honestly. Um, I think that it might be good for some, but I believe a lot of these places that we go, that addicts go to get rehab, are taking advantage of these people. Um, it's like a revolving door. They want the insurance money or the money. They don't really care about aftercare or mental health or anything like that. Most of these people are, you know, don't even really want to be there working in that environment anyway. You know, that the turnover rate uh in that um in that job is unbelievable. You know, when I was going through it all, I had the same place that I went to a few times, and there was never the same people there working the few times that I've been back.
That's right.
Um,
That's right,
Well,
Kristen.
I think the problem is too, like, so for me, Kristen, I'm 11 years sober off of cocaine, right? And what rehabs teach you is that you need to be sober off of every substance.
right,
Well, you know, marijuana was not a problem for me. You know, I don't drink, but drinking was never a problem for me. My
right,
problem was cocaine and the reasons why I was drawn to cocaine. Thank God I had the ability and, you know, the money to be able to go to behavioral therapy, and understand later on. You know, I did do AA and CA, and I really regretted it.
right,
Because it didn't, you know, CA and AA didn't help me understand why I was doing what I was doing. Behavioral therapy did. And once I was able to understand what my compulsion was doing, where the break happened, I was able to heal a little bit better mentally as well. And that's what we need to be doing for everybody. We need to be giving them therapy and
right,
behavioral therapy where they can immerse themselves and the reasons why they're doing what they're doing and where does it stem from.
right,
That's right, Bryce. And there's a terrible shortage of available therapists and affordable therapists for people who need it. I mean, like Kristen said, for people who are experiencing homelessness, they can't afford a therapist. And I mean, like during the pandemic, I'll tell you a personal story. I had a friend who was suicidal. This was during the lockdowns, right? And a lot of people struggled with, suicidal thoughts. And this is a friend I've known for 40 years. They're not typically a depressed person, but they got depressed, terribly depressed during the lockdowns. They were having a suicidal crisis, right? And they called the suicide hotline, the national suicide hotline, trying to speak to a counselor. And they got a recording saying, "We are so swamped right now, we can't take your call. Please leave a message and we'll call you back whenever we can." And they never called him back. So I ended up having to sit on the phone with my friend all night and just talking them through it. I ended up playing therapist, right? And I know a lot of you out there can relate to that. You've probably had a friend or a family member, or maybe you yourself have had a similar crisis. There was no counselor available for you. There was no trained professional available for you at that moment of crisis when you need it that night. And it might be late at night after 5 p.m. when your therapist's office is closed. and you need a friend to sit with you and just talk with you and listen to you, sometimes that's the best therapy of all. But getting back to Bobby and what his plan is for this, he talks a lot about our mental health crisis. Of course, he knows that we have a crisis with over medication, people that are taking antidepressants, that, I think a lot of people are in SSRIs, but also, and something I haven't heard him talk about, and I hope that he will, or give it some consideration. I've been talking about this for quite some time, and I'm going to put this in his ear for what it's worth, is that we need more than just a national suicide hotline. We need a national taxpayer-backed mental health crisis hotline that is staffed around the clock 24/7 with enough people to take those calls for people who are having a mental health crisis. It's one of the ways that I think we can cut back on these mass shootings, on acts of violence in our streets. You hear the stories of people who commit acts of violence, and oftentimes they say, I was having a mental health crisis, I was having a breakdown, and nobody understood, and there was nobody that I could talk to. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go kill my girlfriend. I didn't want to go do this, that, or the other thing. I knew it was a bad thing, but I didn't have anybody to talk me out of it. And a national mental health crisis hotline like that, I think, could be a tremendous help to people who are in need of that crisis intervention at a moment like that. So I hope that that's something that Kennedy will integrate into his platform. I think it would be a damn good use of taxpayer dollars. And I think that you could get a lot of Republicans to agree that that would be a good use of our taxpayer dollars. And we could do it, it wouldn't have to cost an arm and a leg. I think we could do this responsibly and not waste taxpayer funds doing it. And how can it be considered a waste if it's preventing acts of violence, if it's preventing suicides, if it's getting people the mental health help that they need at a time of crisis?
Spot on, Lori. Spot on. Tyler, what's up, my man?
Yeah, like that's something that's yeah. I'm really conflicted on a lot of things when it comes to like government spending and like government backed entities. I mean, like I guess the main reason would be just because like it seems like most of the government run organizations that we have are kind of shit shows. But hopefully Bobby can fix that. I guess like it's one of those things that like I guess I've always kind of like believed that like hey, we don't need to be spending a bunch of our taxpayer dollars. Like I'd rather them not take taxes from me, to be totally honest. But like looking at the stuff that our tax dollars actually go to, it's like okay, so like I don't necessarily believe in like free education or free healthcare or I believe that like we just don't have the money to support those things. However, there is a however. Like anytime like war breaks out in the Middle East, we just print billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, and it's just like okay, so like if I had the choice between giving Israel and giving Ukraine and giving Taiwan like hundreds of billions of dollars, or giving black people reparations for slavery, I'm giving black people reparations for slavery. To be totally honest, and like it's like and I'm making like I've been to the doctor like less times than they've bailed out the banks, I think, in my adult life. I mean, it's bizarre. It's like I just can't afford it. If something like if I'm dying of something, I'm just gonna die of it because I can't go to the doctor. You know what I mean? Like I can barely pay the bills I have and like feed my kids and stuff, and I'm not gonna put them in a I don't want to put them in a hole. So it's just like if I had the choice between them wasting our money on these stupid wars or us getting things that actually benefit us, I'm going to take that. Even I guess in a perfect world we could figure out a way to do it without either one. But yeah, I mean it's kind of bizarre to hear that we can't afford things when like we can always afford war. It just makes no sense. And that's why I guess it's got me kind of conflicted on the issue, because it's just like yeah, we could just you know we could definitely reallocate the funds for something different. And yeah, there's got to be something done about the mental health crisis, whether it's the recovery farms or or hotlines that people can call. Those are things that I think can help, because think about this. I guess so my brother's like schizophrenic, but he's not diagnosed with schizophrenia, but like the dude like tells me he's Jesus like on a weekly basis. I mean, I don't, you know, he's definitely been diagnosed bipolar um and you know, things like that. And it's just, you know, it's hard. Like I have to have conversations with this dude like once a week and like talk him off a ledge, and like nobody can help. Like we've called the police. They've shown up, and he just talks his way out of it. And like we've only had him like I probably had like dozens and dozens of calls to like well checks on him, and he's been Baker acted like twice, you know, successfully. All the other times he just talks his way out of it, and it just does no good. And like if the dude ends up doing something crazy to himself or to others, it's like, dude, I've done everything I freaking can, and like I don't know like what else to do, you know. And you know, I was thinking about it, like, you know, there was a time where there was like insane asylums, and like those insane asylums were not great places, you know, and there definitely could be reforms. But like, I think it's about time to bring something similar back, because honestly, like some people just need to be at least, you know, institutionalized until they can get better. And like, you know, I hate to say it about my brother, but I mean, like, he's one of those people who just needs to be, you know, like he needs help, and and like he's not getting it, and it's incredibly frustrating. You know, it's hard to watch. And so, um, you know, I don't know exactly why they disappeared, because they disappeared like right around the time I was born.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan got rid of them in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's when the insane asylums, if you will, the state hospitals all closed down. But so, yeah, isn't it a coincidence that in the 40 years since, we now have a homeless crisis that we never had before? Because there are those people, like Kristen said earlier, who are not in any way equipped to work, to handle a job, to handle the responsibilities of daily life. You know, they're just not equipped to handle that, and they need housing too. And that's what those insane asylums were for. It was a place that they had a roof over their heads, they had some supervision so that they wouldn't wander off and go out into society and kill somebody or do something crazy. You know, that's in that sense that they were actually a good thing. And I think it's something that our society needed. And interesting about insane asylums, you know, they sort of came into being in the 19th century in this country, because cities, states, and eventually the federal government felt that it was the best solution to a problem, so that you wouldn't have violent people roaming the streets who were mentally ill. Um, you know, they used to build them on the outskirts of town. They built them outside of the cities, outside of the metro area. They kind of put them out in the country back then. And the idea was to keep the citizens of the town safe from the people who might do them harm, you know? I don't know if that's still the way it ought to be, but that's kind of an interesting historical tidbit about how we used to approach mental health in this country.
Well, they got
But I
rid
think
of
it's
the
also very important to recognize that we also experimented on many, many, many of
right.
those people that were in those institutions. And so I agree with you, Lori. We need to go back to that, but we need to learn the lessons of the past. I mean, there was this town outside of New York City called Letchworth Village, and we all used to go when we were young because it was an abandoned insane asylum. Like the whole town was just one gigantic asylum. And what they used to do there was they would give them, they were known for giving patients syphilis and then trying to cure them just to see if the cures were going to work. They tried all kinds of different brain surgeries on them, removed limbs, tried, you know, tested vaccines and all kinds of terrible things on these people. So we need to make sure that if we do this, we do it right.
That's right. And you know what? A lot of the MK Ultra experiments in the 1950s and 1960s were done on inmates in these asylums, sometimes without their knowledge or consent because they were unable to consent. And that was absolutely horrible. Kennedy's well aware of that history. And another interesting tidbit I'll share, when Bobby was a teenager, he volunteered at his local, quote, insane asylum, his local hospital, And he worked directly with very, very mentally ill people. He spent quite a bit of time there. And that's one of the reasons why this issue is so near and dear to his heart. And, it's also been, something that the Kennedys have always championed historically. His aunt Eunice Kennedy, of course, founded the Special Olympics and did all sorts of mental health programs during the JFK administration. JFK was the first president to prioritize mental health care in America. And, the Special Olympics, it's for people with mental as well as physical disabilities. It's always been a cause that the Kennedys have championed. And again, when you compare Kennedy to our other major candidates, Donald Trump, President Biden, they're not doing anything about it. They don't even seem to have a plan about it. You're going to get more of the same with Trump and Biden, and there won't be any real meaningful help from them because they just don't care. It's not on their radar.
100%. 100%. All right, let's go to Kristen or Liberty. Which one of you guys had? I already forgot. Whose hand was up first?
Well, I
Go
just
ahead,
wanted to
Kristen.
say, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say something about the insane asylums. The main reason why they got rid of them is because yes, they would do an experiment, some ugly experiments, but also that because back then we did women's rights. We didn't have women's rights, gay rights, and all these things, and people were putting family members in for masturbation, for women leaving their husbands, for being gay, for all these things that are just, that would blow your mind today. People would say, "Oh my God," you put your family member in an insane asylum for that, but they were doing those sorts of things. And then once they're there, there's no one to watch over these doctors to say, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that," because this is their insane asylum. They're in charge, and they're going to do what they want to do. And there's nobody to say no. That people with that were born with handicaps were put as one of his cousins. Isn't that correct? Bobby's cousins was in one of these places because she
His
had
aunt.
his aunt. His aunt.
It's
Okay,
Rosemary Kennedy.
Rosemary.
She had
That's right.
a lobotomy when she was young,
A
and
botched lobotomy.
yeah,
Right.
botched lobotomy, and so she ended up spending the rest of her life in a hospital.
And we want to think that today we are more advanced people, but if you really look at humanity, we're not. And you'd have to worry about these sorts of things. So yes, I think that there needs to be somewhere for people to be able to go, but there's got to be some serious reform. Like there can't be even just anything to be able to where they can just do whatever. That sort of thing kind of scares me. A lot of people don't believe in free healthcare and don't believe in free housing, but it's definitely better than, I think free healthcare would help that, because with free healthcare comes the help with the mental health crisis, because today psychologists are considered in that free healthcare. Housing, there's not a lot of land left, unfortunately. And the ones that there is land left or houses left, that they're owned by those big corporations that that Bryce was talking about, which there's not really anything we can do about that because they already own them, unfortunately. I don't know really how we would get them back.
That's a good point. One solution that some cities and states are trying is they're buying up older motels that are kind of being phased out and in danger of being torn down, and repurposing them into housing for the homeless. That's one thing that perhaps the federal government might consider in areas where there isn't room to build new housing. I mean, say in a state like Texas or Oklahoma, where I am, we've got plenty of land. where we
Right.
can build new stuff. But on the East Coast and more populated, densely populated areas, that's not really an option. But there's always some older motels and apartment homes that could be repurposed. That's one possible solution.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think the insane asylums of America are a warning sign, right? Like, if you do a deep dive in history and you study genetics and you study how we started to understand, how we got blue eyes, how we got brown eyes, how people were able to link certain cancers to certain genetics, what you'll find is, if you go back far enough, is a lot of people picking up off of some of the, I hate to say it, experiments that Joseph Mengele did while he was a doctor at Auschwitz.
Right.
I remember a doctor in uh, one of my college classes telling me that it's unfortunate that Mengele actually advanced our knowledge, without realizing it, advanced our knowledge of medicine about 100 years. And it's sad that it's that kind of horror that allows for that growth to happen, right? Because we wouldn't know some of the diseases and the mental issues that we had we not done some of the horrible things that we did in those asylums. And it's just so bad that people have to suffer for that. But go
Right.
ahead, Liberty.
Thanks, Bryce. I think the thing that when we talk about reform in this area with insane asylums, that type of thing, because I think that Tyler needs a place to bring his brother, and we also need to protect him when he's there. And so the key word is transparency. Any reform that we start with, it's transparency. And I think where we have an advantage now is that I think that if you put your loved one into one of those institutions, with the technology we have right now, I think you should be able to see and check in on them virtually with a secured blockchain type of app that you can check in on their room. Nobody's doing a botched lobotomy if there's a camera there that your family member can check in on you on. I don't know exactly how that would work. I would defer to doctors to try to structure that, and to other experts. I would. But that's where I would start, is transparency. Because mental illness is so taboo to talk about, and I don't care who you are, somebody somewhere connects to you that suffers from it, including myself. I've dealt with depression before. I get it. So I think it's important that we help the rest of the population that doesn't deal with it and only is affected by it understand it a little better, and that there needs to be a really good structure to help those that are in need. And you never know when it's going to hit you. You could go 40 years of your life with nothing being a problem, and wham, there it is. So that's all I wanted to say, was transparency really needs to be a big part of it. I'm a little tired. I've been up for almost 20 hours, so I'm going to drop down a listener, but it's been really nice talking with all you guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna be closing it actually relatively soon, but one of the things that I'm glad Lori is here for, because I wanted to remind everybody of this, and I know Lori knows this. In 1992, Ross Perot was talking about this and talking about how do we raise money to not only pay down the debt, but pay so that we can start getting some of the people off the street that maybe are there because they can't control that they're there. And he talked about raising the gas tax to 50 cents over 5 years. And he broke it down about how in just a two-term presidency, we could have ended the debt and also have paid to keep certain medical facilities opened had we gone that route. Now, it's funny that the Democrats and the Republicans railed against Perot on this, and then eventually we did do this. But unfortunately, it was too little too late, and now the debt has just ballooned beyond something that we'll probably be able to fix. But I just wanted to share that little tidbit with you
I
because it was
remember
talked about.
that. Yeah, old
Hmm.
folks like me remember that. I thought that was a
And
pretty
he
darn
was
good
torn
plan.
apart for it. He was torn apart for it.
I remember he was savaged for that, but it was a good idea.
And that's why I'm so excited to see that it seems to me, Lori, that Kennedy is taking pages out of Perot's run with
Mhm.
this, allowing, this 30-minute infomercial to go on. I think that's going to be really awesome.
That's very
Um,
Ross Perot. Yeah. I
very
love it.
Ross Perot. And what I'm
Uh-huh.
hoping to see is that he's going to open up offices like Perot did. Instead of us going to collect the votes from them, Perot opened up a bunch of stations where you could actually go in to your local town or the city that was nearest you, and you could just sign up to get him on the ballot. And I really think we should be focusing in and honing on what Ross did right in 1992 and driving
Hmm.
that home for 2024.
Great. I mean, yeah, Ross had so many good ideas. Now, when we look back, I think a lot of people who might have made fun of Ross Perot in 1992 look back now and kind of go, oh, that was a missed opportunity. Maybe we should have voted for Perot. Instead, we ended up with Bill Clinton, right? And Clintons and Bushes for the next 30 years. Maybe we made a mistake. We talked about a lot of really cool things here, a lot of important things on this space. I know it was only intended to be a brief one, but the conversation just kind of evolved that we started talking about all these domestic policy issues that mean the world to Robert Kennedy, things that he deeply cares about and wants to help fix. So this turned out to be a great space. And, last week after Bobby's campaign kitchen Twitter space, where I think the title was Making America Affordable Again, we did touch on a lot of these issues in the space we did after Bobby's space, where we just kind of opened up the floor and let people tell their own personal stories about their struggles and what it's really like trying to make it out here in the Bidenomics economy, and how much it sucks. But we heard some amazing stories and it really touched my heart. We had people crying on that space, just breaking down in tears, sharing their stories and relating to one another. And it was just beautiful. So I took it and I thought it was so good. I wanted to preserve it for posterity. And I want Bobby to hear it. So that's another reason that I take some of these good spaces and I repurpose them into the podcast, the Kennedy Americans podcast, because I know that Bobby will hear that. And it goes out on all these other platforms for people that don't use Twitter. And we just created a brand new YouTube channel, and I pinned the link here at the nest at the top. I hope you guys will subscribe. Of course, it's YouTube, and you know how they love to censor Bobby. I just created that channel like 3 days ago, and I started uploading past episodes of the podcast. And immediately, dudes, within like 2 hours, YouTube took down 2 of the episodes. So they started censoring us right away, right? Brand new channel, and they were already censoring us. So this channel might not last long. It wouldn't surprise me if YouTube finds a reason to ban it. But that means we're on the right track. If they're banning it, it must be good. So I took last week's space about making America affordable again, where we touched on a lot of the same issues that we're talking about here tonight. And if you guys missed it, or if you want to hear it again, we'll be airing it tomorrow night. It's going to premiere at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Pacific on that YouTube channel. And it's I think it's about an hour and a half long, really deep dive into all of these issues that we touched on here. So I wanted to let you guys know about that, make you aware of it. And if you just, subscribe to that YouTube channel, click the notifications bell, it'll send you a reminder when it goes live. That's 9 o'clock tomorrow night, Friday night.
Thank you, Lori. I really appreciate that. And before we leave, guys, I just want to share a really awesome story with you. You never know who you're going to meet in spaces. And since starting these spaces, I've connected with a lot of people who, found out that I love political memorabilia. And I have actually been able to connect with people who helped run Ross Perot's campaign. And wouldn't you believe that I have been sent two Ross Perot T-shirts, one from 1992, one from 1996. I have
Awesome.
two books by Ross Perot that are signed. I have pins, I have bumper stickers, and and I was telling somebody I couldn't find any bumper stickers from 1996. It's almost impossible to find. And wouldn't you know, they had a Reform bumper sticker, and they had that 1996 Perot choke bumper sticker that they just sent out to me and I just got a few days ago. So people, you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know who might have a little tidbit of nostalgia that they want to share with you, because all of that is now going on my wall in my office at my home to continue my Perot wall. So I just want to leave you
That's
with that,
awesome.
isn't it? I just want to leave you guys with that little bit of tidbit, because that meant the world to me.
It
Just
does.
somebody taking that time and recognizing how much I love Ross Perot. And I have so many bumper stickers from his campaign now, I don't even know what to do with them. But it's just the kindness of the people that we meet here. And I think this is the journey that Bobby is putting us on. We're meeting people, and we're meeting just beautiful souls. And there's the Heal the Divide for you. Ross Perot started it. Kennedy's going to finish it. And with that, you all, I'm going to leave you. Have a wonderful night. Kristen, next time, I promise. I love you guys.
I just wanted to ask Lori if her podcast is on Spotify.
I don't think it's on Spotify. We do need to get on Spotify.
Yeah, Bobby's got one there.
Yeah, we're signing up with Podbean, and I think Podbean will send it out to all the different audio podcasting platforms as well, like Apple, Spotify, etc. But yeah, Thanks for reminding me. I need to do that.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All righty, guys.
Everybody give each other a follow. Make sure that you guys are following each other. And we will catch you guys on the flip side.
Well,
until then, peace and love.
Peace and love, guys.
Peace out. Love y'all. Good night.